My stepdaughter kept me out of the delivery room, screaming that her biological father had to see the baby first. I closed her accounts, took back the gifts I'd given, and stopped paying her rent. Her father never even showed up. Make sure to subscribe, write your story in the comments, and let's begin. My name is Thomas. I'm 51 years old. My hands are carved from years of labor, skin thickened by sun and steel, palms split by calluses that never quite heal. I've worked construction all my life, building foundations for other families' dreams, stacking bricks and beams for homes I could never afford myself. Yet in all that sweat and dust, the one foundation I wanted most was not of wood or stone. It was a family, a place where sacrifice meant belonging. A few years ago, I believed I found that. Her name was Linda. She came with warmth, with a smile that softened my edges. She also came with a daughter, Kate, grown, 20 when I met her, with a sharp tongue and sharper eyes. At first, she kept her distance. I was just her mother's new husband, another man passing through the frame of her life. But I wanted more than that. I wanted to prove that family wasn't written in blood but in action, in the willingness to step up where another man had walked away. So I stepped up. When Kate needed help with college tuition, I paid it. Semester after semester, watching the numbers in my account shrink but telling myself it was an investment, not in grades or degrees but in connection. When she needed an apartment in Dallas, I co-signed the lease. $1,200 a month, every month, pouring out of my pocket into a space where I was never invited to stay the night. I furnished that apartment, 2 couches, tables, chairs, the kind of things young people don't think about until they're gone. I bought her a laptop when she complained that hers was too slow, a slim silver one she could take to class and show off to friends. I added her to my health insurance plan, an extra $260 a month, because she said she couldn't risk medical bills derailing her studies. I covered her phone bill, her subscriptions, even slipped her gas money when she was short. Every transfer, every purchase, every quiet gift. I told myself this was love. This was fatherhood. I never said it aloud, but deep down, I waited for the moment when she would look at me not as Linda's husband, not as some man paying bills in the background, but as dad. That word, that recognition. And when she announced she was pregnant, I thought that moment was near. I was thrilled, more than thrilled. I called friends at work, boasting that I was finally going to be a grandfather. I imagined the child running through my backyard, learning to fish in the Oklahoma ponds, learning to hammer nails by my side. I bought baby clothes months in advance, a tiny onesie with a construction truck on the front, as if that little child would inherit my world through fabric alone. I drove to Dallas almost every other weekend during her pregnancy. She'd call with small complaints, the sink leaking, the fridge making noise, the door lock sticking, and I would get in my truck, drive 3 hours and fix it. I'd haul groceries upstairs, lugging heavy bags while she scrolled her phone. I stocked her kitchen, filled her pantry, smiled when she said nothing. I didn't need thanks. I thought love was silent, that it spoke best through work done without acknowledgement. And then came the day, the delivery. I remember the hospital smell. Antiseptic, metallic, too clean. I remember clutching flowers in one hand, take-out bags in the other, walking down the corridor with a grin I couldn't hide. My heart was beating like a drum in my chest. I imagined holding the baby, imagined Kate smiling at me for once, imagined Linda whispering that this was the start of something new, something whole. But instead, her voice shattered everything. It wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a private word meant only for her mother or the nurse. It was a scream sharp enough to cut bone. You have no right to be in the delivery room. My real father should be the first to see the baby. The words slammed into me harder than any fist. I stopped in the hallway, frozen mid-step, gifts dangling stupidly from my hands. Nurses turned their heads. Visitors looked. And there I stood, a man who had poured years of sweat and money into her life, suddenly cast as an intruder. Her real father, the man who hadn't paid a dime of her rent, the man who wasn't there when her car broke down on the highway, the man who didn't know what textbooks cost or how many nights I'd stayed up working extra hours to cover them. That ghost of a father, absent yet worshipped. She wanted him, not me. I can't describe the silence that followed. It wasn't quiet. Hospitals are never quiet. Machines beep, intercoms call codes, babies cry. But around me, in that instant, it was like a vacuum. King out every ounce of air, leaving me with nothing but the echo of her words. You have no right. I looked down at what I held. The flowers, the food, the offerings of a man trying to belong. They looked ridiculous now. A clown's props. My hands shook, not from age but from something darker, something hollower. I thought about every late night I had sat at my kitchen table, bills spread out, calculator in hand, trying to stretch my income across her needs. I thought about how many times I had told myself it was worth it, that love would return in its own time. I thought about the pride I had felt calling myself a grandfather. And in that moment, all of it collapsed. I wasn't family. I was a wallet, a pair of hands that carried burdens but never carried love. The delivery room door shut in my face. And though I stood outside holding proof of my care, I felt like a stranger trespassing in a place I had helped build. That night, I sat in the hospital parking lot with the engine running and the radio silent. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just stared at the dashboard lights while her words played again and again. You have no right. My real father should be the first to see the baby. The phrase became a hammer, striking in rhythm with my pulse. Every beat, another blow. And with each blow, something inside me hardened. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Years of sacrifice glowed back at me in numbers. Draft after draft, charge after charge. Every one of them tied to her. I scrolled through. Dallas apartment rent, $1,200, set to withdraw on the 1st of the month. Health insurance, $260, automatically drafted, quietly hidden in my pay stub deductions. Student loan payments, balances I had no obligation for but had taken anyway, because she had begged. Subscriptions, streaming services, even her goddamn Spotify premium tied to my card. The phone bill, a family plan where she was the biggest user. The laptop still being paid off in installments, gleaming on her desk, never acknowledged as my gift. All of it mine. All of it invisible. For years, I had thought of these as ropes binding me to her, threads weaving us into something called family. But in that parking lot, I saw them differently. They weren't threads. They were chains. Chains she had wrapped around me, heavy and merciless, while calling another man dad. I scrolled until my thumb ached. I did the math in my head. Thousands every year. Tens of thousands, probably. Enough to buy a second house, to pad my retirement, to ease the pain in my joints that told me I couldn't swing a hammer forever. Instead, I had poured it into her life, into her future. And in one sentence, she had erased it all. That night, I made my decision. I started with the easiest cut. The credit card. It had been my quiet allowance to her, tucked in her wallet like a lifeline she never acknowledged but always used. I pressed a button, and just like that, the account was closed. The line went dead. Next came the apartment. I logged into the rental portal, the one I had set up under my own name because she hadn't qualified a loan. I saw the upcoming rent already scheduled to withdraw. I canceled it. Then I wrote a cold, simple email to the landlord. From this point forward, I will no longer be responsible for payments. Tenant is solely accountable. I hit send. My finger didn't even tremble. The insurance was harder because it meant dealing with HR the next morning. But I sent the email anyway. Remove dependent from coverage effective immediately. I didn't explain why. I didn't need to. Then came the laptop. I was still paying it off monthly, but the receipt listed it as mine. I decided I would drive down to Dallas and take it back. It wasn't hers anymore. It never had been. One by one, I cut the ties. A butcher carving away fat, leaving only bone. By the time the sun came up over the Oklahoma horizon, Kate's safety net was gone. I expected to feel guilt, to feel hesitation, but I felt nothing except clarity. A cold, sharp clarity that I hadn't tasted in years. 2 weeks later, the first tremors hit. Her landlord called me, his tone impatient. Clipped. Thomas, the rent hasn't been paid. I've left messages with Kate, but she hasn't answered. You're the guarantor. What's going on? I told him flatly, I'm no longer covering it. Collect from her directly. There was a pause on the other end, disbelief hanging heavy. She doesn't have the funds. You know that. If you don't step in, she'll be evicted. I know, I said. That's not my problem anymore. And I hung up. The phone shut off next. I received an automated message from the carrier. Account delinquent. Service suspended. I imagined her trying to make a call, staring at the screen when nothing went through. Maybe she cursed the provider. Maybe she cursed me. Either way, the silence she faced was her own making. The health insurance followed. A letter arrived in the mail addressed to her but sent to my house, because I was the policyholder. Coverage terminated effective immediately. I left it on the counter for Linda to see. She didn't say a word, but the silence between us stretched like a crack running through glass. By the end of the second week, her life was unraveling. Rent unpaid, insurance gone, phone disconnected, the laptop payments canceled. Her safety nets shredded one after another, each cut clean, deliberate, final. And me? I slept better than I had in years. It wasn't joy. It wasn't triumph. It was relief. Relief that I had finally stopped being a fool, stopped bleeding for someone who saw me as nothing more than a checkbook. Relief that I had taken control of the only thing I could. My labor, my money, my respect. The call started then. Not from her because her phone was dead. From Linda. Late at night, her voice sharp with accusation. Thomas, how could you do this? She just had a baby. She needs help. She doesn't need my help, I answered calmly. She made that clear in the hospital. She chose who her family is. Let her call him. Linda's voice shook, half anger, half fear. You're punishing her for being emotional, for saying something she didn't mean. I laughed then, a sound dry and humorless. People say what they mean in their weakest moments. She didn't want me there. She wanted her real father. So let him pay. Let him show up. Silence followed. And in that silence, I knew the truth she didn't want to admit. David, the so-called real father, was nowhere to be found. He never was. He floated in and out like smoke, promising visits, offering empty words, but never anchoring himself in her life. She had chosen him in name, but he was never there in flesh. Still, Linda pressed on. She just had a child. You can't abandon her now. I didn't abandon her, I said. She abandoned me. In front of strangers, in front of you. She cut me out of the moment I had waited years for. I just finally believed her. The first eviction notice arrived the following week. Linda opened it, her hands trembling as she read. They're giving her 10 days to pay or vacate. I didn't flinch. Then she'll learn to stand on her own. Or she'll learn that her father's promises are worthless. Linda looked at me then, eyes wide with something between horror and desperation. This isn't you. You're not cruel. She was wrong. I wasn't cruel. I was finally honest. Because cruelty is building a life on someone else's back while calling them nothing. Cruelty is spitting in the face of the man who kept the lights on, then demanding he keep carrying you. I wasn't cruel. I was finished. And as the walls closed in on Kate, as the system she thought was unshakable collapsed, I felt no pity, only vindication. For the first time in years, I wasn't the fool at the table. Kate's panic came quick, like a drowning swimmer thrashing for air. When the eviction notice arrived and her phone was dead, she turned to the only name she thought mattered, David, her real father. She called from borrowed phones, from friends' devices, even from the hospital's courtesy line. I know because Linda told me, her voice dripping with both anger and fear. She's trying to reach her father. You've backed her into a corner. I only shook my head. No. She backed herself into this corner the moment she screamed that I had no right to stand by her side. But still she dialed. Over and over, David's name flashing on screens he never picked up. He ignored her. Let it go to voicemail. Let his daughters please pile up like unopened bills. That was the man she had chosen. That was the father she believed should be at her side. And when he didn't answer, the panic turned to desperation. Linda cornered me one evening, her face pale with fury. "Thomas, she's going to lose everything. The baby's only weeks old, and she's facing eviction. You can't just watch this happen." I looked at her steadily. I've been watching for years, watching myself pay every dime, every bill, while David coasted through life without consequence. She made her choice. Let him step in now. Linda's voice broke, trembling. "But he won't. He never has." And yet she screamed for him. I snapped, the words hot and sharp. She spat in my face for him. She cut me out of her life for him. So let her live with the father she wanted. Linda fell silent then, but her eyes burned. She hated me for saying it, hated me more for being right. Days passed. The landlord called again, his patience thinning. "She's out of time, Thomas. If payment doesn't come, she's gone." I told him plainly, "That's her responsibility now." He sighed, muttered something about kids these days, and hung up. Kate left me a voicemail the next night, her voice ragged, shaky. She must have borrowed someone's phone. "Thomas, I don't know what to do. Please, can we just talk?" But there was no apology in her words, no acknowledgement of what she had done. Only fear, only need. I deleted the message without replying. Linda found out and accused me of cruelty. She reached out. She asked for help. "No," I corrected. "She asked for money, not help. If she wanted help, she would have called me Dad. But she didn't. She hasn't. Not once since that night in the hospital." Linda's face twisted with something ugly then. "You're punishing her for not loving you the way you wanted." "No," I said coldly. "I'm punishing myself if I keep paying after she made it clear I don't belong. There's a difference." The silence between us grew wider after that. Nights in bed turned into cold backs and long hours staring at the ceiling. She wanted to fight me, but she couldn't argue with the truth. Kate had chosen her side, and it wasn't mine. Meanwhile, the storm gathered around Kate. Her eviction notice became final. Friends stopped answering her calls, tired of lending phones and couches. She tried David again, her real father, but he didn't even bother with excuses anymore. He simply vanished back into the void he always came from. I heard from one of Linda's cousins that Kate had shown up at her apartment with the baby, begging to stay for a while. 2 nights later, she was gone. Too much noise, too much need, not enough gratitude. No one wanted to shoulder the weight I had carried for years. Linda came home one evening with fire in her eyes. "She's moving from couch to couch. With the baby. Do you even care? That's your grandchild out there." The word stung, but I didn't flinch. "No, that's David's grandchild. Remember? The one she screamed for in the hospital? The one she wanted by her side? That child is his legacy, not mine." Linda slapped the table so hard a glass toppled. "You can't mean that." But I did. Every syllable. Because what Linda couldn't admit was this. Family isn't claimed in the easy moments. It's revealed in the breaking ones. And when the breaking came, Kate didn't choose me. She didn't whisper my name, didn't thank me for the roof I'd kept over her head, didn't ask for the man who had been there every day. She screamed for the ghost who had abandoned her. That was the truth. And now she was living in it. Still, Linda fought me. Night after night she pushed. Just one more month. Just until she gets on her feet. You can't let her sink. I shook my head. If I throw her another rope, she'll never climb. She'll never learn. And she'll never respect me. I'd rather watch her fall than keep being her fool. The words carved a canyon between us. She looked at me then like I was a stranger. Like the man she married had turned into stone before her eyes. But what she never saw, what she refused to see, was that I had already been stone for years, carrying everything, holding up everyone, being strong while no one was strong for me. And I realized something in those nights of silence. It wasn't just Kate who had betrayed me. It was Linda too. Her silence in the hospital, her excuses afterward, her defense of a daughter who spat in my face. She hadn't protected me. She hadn't demanded respect for me. She had let me be nothing. That was the true betrayal. So when she accused me of cruelty, of abandoning them, I answered with the only truth I had left. I didn't abandon Kate. She abandoned me, and you let her. The words hung in the air, thick as smoke. And for the first time, Linda had no reply. It was nearly a month later when the knock came. Heavy, uneven. Not the knock of confidence, but the knock of someone who had already been turned away too many times. I opened the door and there she was, Kate, clutching the baby against her chest, eyes red-rimmed, hair unkempt, a shadow of the woman who had once screamed me out of her delivery room. She didn't step inside. She didn't have the right. She just stood there trembling, her voice cracking. Thomas, please. I don't know where else to go. Behind her words was the silence of truth. David never came. David never answered. David never paid. The real father she had chosen was a ghost once again, leaving her stranded with nothing but bills, eviction notices, and a newborn who needed more than she could give. For a long moment I said nothing. I let her stand in that doorway, holding the child like a shield, her pride already shattered. I wanted her to feel the weight of it, the months, the years, the sacrifices I had made, all erased by one sentence in a hospital hallway. Finally, I stepped aside. Come in. She walked into the house like a stranger. The baby squirmed, whimpering softly, the sound echoing through the silence between us. Linda rushed from the kitchen, her face a mask of both relief and accusation. She gathered Kate in her arms, whispering, "You're safe now," as if I were the danger, not the savior. I sat at the table, waiting, and eventually Kate turned to me. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, her lips trembling. "I was wrong," she whispered. I thought he would come. I thought he cared. But he doesn't. He never did." I leaned forward, my voice low and deliberate. "And yet you screamed for him. You cut me out, Kate. You made it clear I had no place, no right. You wanted him to be first. Remember?" Her face crumpled. She nodded. "I know. I was stupid. I was angry. I didn't mean it. But that was the lie I couldn't stomach." I slammed my hand on the table, the sound sharp enough to make the baby cry. "Don't you dare say you didn't mean it. Words like that don't slip out. They come from the truth buried deep. You meant it in that moment. And in that moment you showed me exactly who I was to you. Nothing." She sobbed then, clutching the child tighter. "Please, I can't do this alone. I need you." I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the yard I had built with my own hands. My voice was steady, cold. "You don't need me. You need what I provide. A roof, money, protection. The same things I gave you for years without a word of thanks. But if you want them now, there has to be a price." Her voice broke. "Anything." I turned back, meeting her eyes with all the weight of years. "Respect. That's the price. From this moment forward, you don't call me Thomas. You don't treat me like a stranger standing in your life. You call me what I've earned, what I've been for years without the name. Dad." The word hung in the air like a sentence. She swallowed hard, her throat working. And then, softly, brokenly, she whispered it. "Dad." The sound pierced me. Not as triumph, but as a bitter recognition of all I had lost along the way. 6 letters that should have been spoken years ago, not dragged out of desperation. But still, they were mine now. Linda wept silently, her hand pressed to her mouth. I nodded once, cold and final. "Then you and the baby can stay. But hear me clearly. If you ever strip me of that title again, if you ever spit in my face the way you did that day, it's over. There will be no second chance. Family is not blood. It is not words. It is actions. And if your actions betray me again, you'll be gone." She sobbed harder, but she nodded. She understood. That night, I set up a room for her and the baby. I watched her put the child to sleep, her shoulders slumped, her face hollowed out by the weight of reality. And for the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not warmth, just control. Because the truth was undeniable now. David would never come. Linda would never protect me. The only way to survive was to make my own place undeniable, to draw a line that could not be crossed without consequence. Over the weeks that followed, Kate softened. She cooked, she cleaned, she spoke to me with a care I had never heard before, and every time she opened her mouth to address me, she called me Dad. At first the word was fragile, trembling. Then it grew steady, deliberate. She had learned. She had felt the cost of betrayal. But I never let myself forget. I carried the hospital hallway inside me like a scar. The echo of her scream, the sting of being cast out, the vision of standing there with flowers and food like a fool. It never left. And maybe that was the point. Scars remind us of what we survived. Scars keep us from falling for the same illusion twice. So now I sit here, writing these words, asking myself if I was wrong. Was I wrong to cut her off? To let her feel the collapse of everything I had been carrying? Was I cruel to stand back while she begged her real father for help that never came? Or was it the only way to teach her the truth? That family is not blood, not empty words, but the grind of sacrifice, the weight of presence, the constancy of showing up? Tell me, what would you have done? Would you have kept paying, kept bleeding, kept carrying the ones who spit on you? Or would you have done what I did? Cut the cord, let them fall, and watch as they finally learned who really stood for them. Because I'll say this much. When she finally called me Dad, it wasn't love I felt. It was justice. And sometimes justice is the only family we have left.